How my imaginary friend ended up on TV. And I know that's a crazy ass statement to say, but I have a story for you guys. So, story time is when I was younger, I had three imaginary friends 40, 50, and Lisa. Yeah, I know. I'm not crazy though, by the way. But I did have them way too long than I should have. I was already in kindergarten, like way past the time, like my mom should have had me evaluated type situation. Anyways, to continue on, Lisa lived under the porch of where we lived. 50 was also there, but 40 was my best friend. When we left and moved out of the house, Lisa ended up staying and we never heard from her again. 50, I was at my grandparents' house and my grandfather backed over her. And then I never spoke to her again. I never brought her up. I never talked about her. That was just the end of her life. Like, she died. My grandpa killed her. And then 40, I had her for a very long time. She would say mean things about my mom, and then I would tell my mom, like, 40 doesn't like you and things like that. Well, the day that we parted ways, my dad was driving, my mom was in the passenger seat, and we were going down the highway of some sort or on the road. And I told my dad, pull over, like we were arguing in the back seat. And my dad's like, I'm not pulling over you for your imaginary friend. And at this point, I'm like, pull over. And then my mom's like, just pull over to my dad. So he pulls over and then I kick her out. Like, I open the door and kick her out. And that was the last time that we ever heard of her. Like, I never talked to her again after that. That was it. Years later, when I was like 17, sorry, I had to bring the groceries in, but years later, my mom saw a documentary with my brother-in-law, that this little girl had a demon attached to her, and the demon's name was 40. And they all think that I was crazy and that maybe a demon was attached to me too, because every memory that I have as a child with these imaginary friends were very vivid. Like, I had them for way too long. It was super creepy. But yeah, she still to this day thinks that I had a demon attached to me, and that the little girl that was on the documentary went through the same things that I went through. That is how my imaginary friend ended up on TV.
That ain't no coincidence, guys. Now, as I say in all these videos, just because I'm reacting to a video doesn't mean that I back or agree with the content that I'm reacting to. It means that I'm reacting to the topic. And I'm also not co-signing everything that this woman has ever said, nor that she has done. Now, the topic of imaginary friends is a deep one. Is it demonic? Is it okay for kids to have imaginary friends? This topic has been widely covered in a lot of different videos, and I want to share you some of these takes.
What you're about to see proves that some imaginary friends aren't imaginary at all. And if this ever happens to your children, bless your home, your family, immediately. It isn't uncommon for children to have imaginary friends. I think most do. But when you can catch them on camera, they're not imaginary. The footage I'm getting ready to show you is from inside a house. I'm going to show you the footage, the original. Then I'm going to show you a zoomed in version. Everything about this screams demonic. It's not a child. It's the size of a child. But this is something dark. Let me know in the comments what you think. And if you've ever experienced, I want to hear about it. Check this out. What you're about to see proves.
Now, me personally, I never had an imaginary friend when I was a kid. I just thought that it was stupid. I thought it was weird. But at the same time, I'm not out here trying to throw shade at kids that do. I think in our childhood, we try to find ways to cope with things. I was blessed enough to have a twin brother, so I always had somebody there with me. Like my twin brother and I, we went everywhere. We did everything together. So I didn't need an imaginary friend. I had somebody that was exactly like me there, right? But when we see stuff like this in this video, there's going to be a couple of different angles we can come at this with. This is AI, or we could obviously come at it from the angle that this guy is just using a video of two kids playing around in their house and saying that it's camera footage of an imaginary friend caught on camera, or it could really be true. I'm not here to verify or vouch or say that this video is valid in any kind of way. What I'm saying is there are people that do believe that these are demonic spirits.
You have to hear this. Imaginary friends might not be so imaginary. A 15-year-old girl named Madison said that when she was 3, she had an imaginary friend named Kellum. Her mom, Kelly, didn't think much of it, but gradually Kellum started to feel less and less imaginary. Madison said that Kellum was a tall man in his 40s who was always wearing work clothes. One day, Kelly caught Madison singing a song called Daisy Bell, a song that she had no way of learning otherwise. And when she asked her where she had learned the song, Madison said that Kellum had taught it to her. Kelly still wasn't spooked though, but things started to get creepier and creepier. Madison said that at first her imaginary friend Kellum was very nice, but as time passed, he wasn't so nice anymore. She said that he would start to yell at her, tap on her windows, and keep her up all night. He would always want to talk and play and would just never let her go to sleep. She became very afraid of Kellum, and she told her mom that his face just doesn't look the same anymore. She said that he started to look sick and his face became skinnier and his eyes became sunken in. All of this was very scary to her, but then one night things escalated to a whole new level. Madison said that one night Kellum was being very aggressive and he walked up to her and grabbed her by the wrist. She screamed for her mom and Kelly came and picked up her daughter. The windows in Madison's room were blowing like there was a big gust of wind, but to her surprise, the windows were actually closed. Kelly eventually contacted her father, who was a pastor in a Pentecostal church. He anointed the house with crosses of oil, and Kellum never came back. But that's not all. Later on, Kelly did a property search and found out that the house adjacent to theirs was bought in 1941 by a man named Callum Beasley. You have to hear this.
Yeah, man. So there's a comment section right here is kind of hinting on what I tend to believe. This person says, I believe that it's not normal to have imaginary friends. This one says, my son had an imaginary friend he called Uncle Nick. He described Nick, and the description was a good friend of mine that had unalived himself 14 years earlier. This person says, when I was 5, I didn't have imaginary friends. I actually knew they were dead. It's been a wild life of haunted and paranormal everything. This person says, me and my sister never had imaginary friends. Another says, he was a demon. And another said, I've never had an imaginary friend. This person says, what's Azazel doing there? There's an imaginary friend episode, by the way. You could take your pick from it, though. Element, I don't know what that means. But ultimately, guys, we got to remember that this is a spiritual world that we live in. There are demons and spiritual things happening underneath the veil, guys, that we're not able to see with normal eyes. The Bible says those that have ears to hear, and those that have eyes to see. Some people see differently than we do. Right. And your child, I feel like things that children are able to see is because they haven't been exposed to the darkness of the world in ways that adults have. They haven't opened their lives up to sin in the manner that adults have. I feel like since they're more pure, they can see things more clearly than a lot of adults can. And as we get older, we start to cope with things and start to minimize our experiences, and we start to live in self-doubt because we just want to cope with and make it through things without having to face the reality of things. Whereas kids are much more innocent, so they see things for what they are, so they can see things that are spiritual and they can sense them just like animals. Animals are pure, and your dog can sense something before you can, that you might not even see it, but your dog can see what's going on. I hope I'm explaining that right. But guys, like I said, I just because I'm covering a topic doesn't mean that I agree with everything that I'm covering the topic on, or it doesn't mean that I agree with the content creator and everything either. This is just a topic that landed across my timeline, and I thought it was interesting enough to share with you guys. And then I wanted to ask what your opinions are. Do you have an experience where you had an imaginary friend as a child, or maybe your kids do? And what are your thoughts on it? Do you think it's normal, or do you think it's something more sinister? That's going to do it for this one. I'll leave the links to all of these videos that I reacted to in the description. That way I can give the content creators credit for their work, as well as to make it easy for you to follow them if that's what you choose to do. That's going to do it for this one, though. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, God bless.